Hello students, now we will start with new topic that is about water pollution. How can we define water pollution? Water pollution can be defined as the type of contamination of water so that water negatively affects its uses. It means that water is not used for drinking, cooking, cleaning or swimming, etc. types of activities. So, it's defined as contamination of water and making it useless for cleaning, cooking, drinking, swimming types of activities. The substances that cause contamination of water are called as water pollutants. Now, water pollutants are of different types. Sewage, industries, and agricultural wastes. The Act of Control of Water Pollution, it was brought in year 1974. The Act on Control of Water Pollution was enacted in 1974. Means government has given some sort of rules and regulations to control water pollutions in the year 1974. Now, some changes are made in this act. That is called as amendment. So, Amendment of Water Pollution Act was given in 1988. The amendment on this act was given in 1988. What is meant by amendment? Any type of act given by the government, if some changes are made in it, means some changes in the constitution level, those are termed as amendments. Changes in constitution. So that is given in 1988. So according to this act, any type of pollutant should not be added to natural waters like rivers, estuaries, oceans or seas. According to this act, any type of water pollutant should not be added to natural waters. What are natural waters? Natural waters are rivers, estuaries, oceans, seas, etc. These are considered as natural waters. Now here we have seen the water pollution is due to some of the wastes that are from sewage, from industries, from agriculture wastes. Sewage is mostly from households, means by the human activity, from households. Industries. Industries are majorly releasing the heavy metals like mercury, cadmium and plumber. mercury, cadmium and plumber. These are termed as heavy metals. Now, what are agricultural wastes? If we use more than the required amount of fertilizer, or if we use more than the required amount of a pesticide, still those are considered as the agricultural wastes. And during the rainy season, these are penetrated into the areas or the fields which and all the water that are nearby the fields and cause contamination to that premises. So here we can use the term like pesticides, fertilizers that release minerals into the nearby waters. So these are termed as few examples for water contaminants. First we will see the water pollutants from industries. From industries are mercury, cadmium and plumber. These three are termed as heavy metals. These three are causing different types of poisonings. First one, mercury poisoning. Mercury poisoning. Mercury poisoning, also termed as Minamata disease. That causes mercury poisoning. Nothing but in other terms it is said as Minamata disease. Minamata disease symptoms are in the newborn there will be deformation in the formation of limbs and hands, etc. Means the next generation kids will not be born with proper hands or legs, etc. That is termed as Minamata disease. It was first seen in Japan area, who used to take fish as the major source of food material. Next is about cadmium poisoning. Cadmium poisoning is also termed as Itai disease. Also termed as Itai disease. It affects majorly the brain and heart and lungs. This one, cadmium poisoning, majorly affects the brain, heart and also lungs. Next one, lead poisoning. Lead poisoning, it is also called as plumbism or Saturnism. It also majorly affects the brain. Next one, there is another type of poisoning caused by copper also. That is termed as copper readers. Copper poisoning. Also, this is not under heavy metals, but this is one of the normal metals, means industrial pollutant that is very harmful. Also termed as copper readers. So, when it is inherited from means one generation to the next generation, then the same copper poisoning is termed as Wilson's disease. When it is inherited, then termed as Wilson's disease. Next, about sewage contamination. Sewage is the contaminated water from households. So households are considered as the major contaminants or formations that are responsible for sewage. So this sewage is treated with the help of sewage treatment plants, and then water is mostly reused. Sewage is treated in sewage treatment plants and made reused. So there are few steps for sewage treatment. First one, primary treatment. Next one, secondary treatment. Third one, tertiary treatment. Now, primary treatment includes mostly physical removal of the waste, large particles from the sewage. It includes physical removal of waste. Secondary treatment includes biological process. Includes biological process. Here, tertiary treatment includes addition of chemicals. Mostly, tertiary treatment is done only when the water has to be meant for human drinking purpose. It includes chemicals and is done only if water has to be intaken by humans as drinking water. At that situation only, tertiary treatment is done. If not, after secondary treatment, water is made available for the people for their normal household usages. We will see now what is the process that is done under sewage treatment. So, I told you the steps: primary treatment, secondary treatment and tertiary treatment. All these steps are done in different chambers. So, first if you take sewage, that is allowed to pass through certain types of big grill-like structures. Passed through grills to remove large particles or large substances. Next. Next, water that is obtained after removal of large wood pieces, some other types of big stone-like structures. So after their removal, water is allowed to pass through grit chambers. What are grit chambers? Grit chambers are those that are used to remove sand particles, small pebbles, etc. So water is allowed to pass through grit chambers. From here, after the removal or the sedimentation of the grit, the topmost water or the effluent we call. So if you take a diagrammatic representation, if this is a beaker, if something is sedimented at the bottom, we call this one as sediment. The topmost obtained water is called as effluent. So here the effluent is allowed to pass to primary sedimentation tanks. We can also use a term like primary settlement tanks. So here, if this is the big chamber, something will be sedimented after the primary settlement. Water is allowed to sediment for few days like that. So this will be again the effluent, topmost water. Now this part is called as primary sludge. That I will write here. The sedimented solid waste from here is called as primary sludge. This is allowed to sludge treating means another chamber. Effluent means the topmost water. Effluent is allowed for aeration. Means continuously air is allowed to pump into other chamber in which the effluent is taken from the primary settlement tanks. Because of continuous aeration, what happens? All the aerobic organisms like bacteria, planktons, zooplanktons, all types of aerobic organisms will be highly grown here. Now, due to aeration, all aerobic organisms grow more here. Now, from here, it is allowed to effluent is passed into secondary sedimentation tank or secondary settled tank. Secondary sedimentation tank. From here, the bottom settled part settled waste is called as secondary sludge or activated sludge. Or secondary sludge. Now, effluent from here is allowed for chlorination, next alum treatment or tertiary treatment. Or chlorination or alum adding, etc. Here, there are some MCQs that are asked from this aeration chamber part. During this effluent treatment, we will write like during aeration, when water is dissolved with oxygen, more, we term as DO. It means dissolved oxygen. When dissolved oxygen is more, then DO is more, then all aerobes plus planktons grow fast, and in this sewage treatment there are means negligible number of planktons. So here we consider only aerobic bacteria and forms into blooms. But in sewage treatment, aerobic bacteria plus fungi during aeration forms into flocks, FLOCs, on the surface of water. On surface of water. Means aerobic bacteria, it is utilizing all the oxygen that is present in the water during aeration, so that its number is growing more. During this time, anaerobes will be suppressed for a while. But still they are not dead. They are suppressed for a while. Their number is not increased. Flocs include aerobic bacteria plus fungal mycelium. Together forms into flock-like structures on the surface of water. Now, here the aerobic bacteria is dependent on oxygen dissolved in water. We term the process as biological oxygen demand. Biological oxygen demand is studied only when oxygen is completely dissolved in water, and this fluctuates basing on the dissolved oxygen, so that we correlate both these dissolved oxygen and biological demand. I gave you just meaning of this dissolved oxygen as when more oxygen content is dissolved in water, then we term that water is having more dissolved oxygen. Then what is meant by biological oxygen demand? Biological oxygen demand can be defined as the requirement of oxygen by microbes to break organic matter in 1 liter of water at 20 degrees centigrade for continuously 5 days. Let's see the diagrammatic representation and also the relation between dissolved oxygen and biological oxygen demand. Initially, water will be containing more content of dissolved oxygen and less content of biological oxygen demand. Means the demand by the bacteria or the aerobic organisms for breaking down of organic matter. That demand is less initially before addition of any of the pollutant. So, initially, demand of oxygen by microbes is less due to less organic matter. Now, in the next stage, we are adding, means we are dumping the sewages into water. So now, sewage, when was added to the water body, then here aerobes are there inside the water. They need little bit of oxygen. They are getting survived. But when sewage is getting added, then in the sewage, there will be more and more content of organic matter that is added into the water bodies. So sewage has organic matter. Now, this organic matter has to be broken down by the aerobic organisms by utilizing the oxygen that is present in water. Now, initially the demand of oxygen is less. Now, when organic matter has been added, then the demand increases. Means biological oxygen demand increases for a while. And all the aerobes that are present in the water will utilize all the dissolved oxygen up to complete oxidation of all this organic matter. When all the organic matter is oxidized and utilized or broken down by the aerobic organisms in presence of water, then slowly the demand of oxygen, means aerobic organisms now need less amount of oxygen, because in the initial stage all the aerobes has utilized the oxygen to break down the organic matter. Later, when BOD, means the demand of oxygen by the aerobes has been completely decreased. Now there is no more content of sewage, because initially it was means utilized by the aerobes. Organic matter was utilized by the aerobes. Then when BOD or the demand of the oxygen by the organisms has been decreased, then automatically the dissolved oxygen content will be increased. So here we have to see some of the steps, like first, BOD is less. The second step, dissolved oxygen is more. In the third stage, sewage is added. Next, in the fourth stage, dissolved oxygen is decreased by utilization of the microbes. Next, it is decreased because of, when sewage is added, then biological oxygen demand increases. By utilization of all the oxygen, dissolved oxygen gets decreased. Next, when all the oxygen is utilized, again in the next step, BOD decreases, means the demand by the aerobe for the oxygen, it decreases. Next in the stage, when the organisms that are depending on oxygen are decreased, automatically dissolved oxygen again will be increased. So this graph we can learn according to these steps in an easy manner. First, it is less. Next, dissolved oxygen is more. Sewage was added. BOD increased. Dissolved oxygen decreased. Next, after some time, BOD got decreased, means the demand decreased. Next, dissolved oxygen is increased after some time. Now, so we say biological oxygen demand is inversely proportional to dissolved oxygen. Now, here, when BOD is increased, then what happens? When all the oxygen is utilized by the aerobes for the breaking down of organic matter, then the fishes or the other aquatic organisms will be killed. When BOD is more, then other aquatics gets killed because of absence of dissolved oxygen. After some time, when BOD is decreased, then dissolved oxygen will be more. When dissolved oxygen is more, then water is considered as clear. When water is clear and more content of oxygen is present, then other aquatic organisms like fishes will be alive. So this is the relation between dissolved oxygen and biological oxygen demand. It is easy to learn this small topic by a small equation like that is biological oxygen demand is inversely proportional to dissolved oxygen. One important point and the steps how we are learning this. And the next one, what is happening to the initial step when BOD is increased, and then what is happening if dissolved oxygen is more to the water. Here concentration is more of the oxygen, but because of BOD, the other aquatic organisms got killed. But here, when BOD is decreased, then dissolved oxygen will be more and water will become clear. This is about relation between biological oxygen demand and dissolved oxygen. When DO is more or dissolved oxygen is more, then phytoplanktons which need water or oxygen for their survival, planktons and algae plus bacteria all together forms into algal blooms on the surface of water. So, oxygen inside water is oxygen, because of presence of algal blooms, oxygen is not penetrated from air into water. So, the fishes or the aquatic organisms die due to suffocation. When such water is stagnant for many days, then it stinks and it gives bad smell in that area. So, accumulation of these microbes or the phytoplanktons or algae or bacteria in the form of algal blooms is also quite dangerous for the aquatic organisms that are surviving. So what are phytoplanktons means? These are free floating small organisms. Next is about biomagnification. Biomagnification means the increase of mineral content in water. So these minerals, basically if they are water soluble, they will be easily dissolved in water. But some of the fat soluble minerals like DDT, mercury, etc., these are not easily dissolved in water. Then they are considered as some hazardous or pollutants to water again. Here some fat soluble substances like DDT and mercury are also responsible for biomagnification. Actually, in these types of minerals, when they are present in particular quantity, then they are not considered as pollutants. That is considered as some reasonable their amount to be exist in the water. But when their quantity is increased beyond the limit, then they are considered as pollutants majorly. So here we will write, so due to running water, this DDT which is on soil is passed into natural waters or any other of water reservoirs which are present in the soils, etc. So basing on their quantity, when water body or any of the water reserved place has 0.0003 parts per million of DDT, then it is not considered as a pollutant. But when the same DDT level, if is increased to 0.04 level, that means the toxicity of the DDT is slowly being created, taken by zooplanktons. Then the same 0.0003 parts per million of DDT, now its content when taken by the zooplanktons, it will be decreased to 0.04 parts per million of DDT inside the zooplankton body. From the zooplanktons which are taken by, if eaten by fishes, then inside the fish body, the same content, if it is increased step by step, its quantity in the fish body, it is accumulated as 0.5 parts per million of DDT in one fish body. Later, when these fishes are, small fishes are eaten by large fishes, when eaten by large fishes, in the large fish body, the same 0.5 parts per million of DDT, it is accumulated more and more, then it will be converted into 2 parts per million of DDT in large fish. Now, when they are taken by birds or any other animals which are aquatically feeding, then inside their body, this 2 parts per million of DDT, now it is accumulated highly as 25 parts per million, because continuously one organism which is depending on other smaller organism is not eating only one and it is living. It will eat till its hunger is finished. So it may eat only 1 or 2, means more than that. So if in that organism's body, if it is accumulated in this increased content of DDT, then in the final organism, it will be more and more in amount. So when taken by birds, next, fish eating birds we can say. Fish eating birds means other animals, means aquatically feeding animals. In their body, it will be finally accumulated as 25 parts per million of DDT in the higher organism's body. Now, what is the side effect that is caused by DDT? DDT causes damage to soft tissues, damage to vital organs, and damage to the fetus in embryo. It damages soft tissues, vital organs. What are vital organs? All the body organs which does metabolic activity. For example, liver is there, vital organ. Heart is there, vital organ. Digestive system, vital organ, like that. Vital organs. Next, fetus. So this is the side effect caused by DDT.